Hi everyone, this is Dan, and this is One Piece Volume 36, part of this 3-in-1, 34, 35, and 36 of the Water 7 arc. Continuing on, just so you guys know, we got another 3 of these 3-in-1s to finish it. This is a pretty long arc, just as a heads up. But I'll try to kind of briefly go over this volume right here. Essentially, we left off Luffy fighting the dock workers of Dock 1 from the Galley Law company in the middle of his fight with Franky, this character that we just introduced in the previous volume. So it's a pretty fun fight. For the most part, the basic summary of the fight is the dock workers find out Luffy has devil fruit powers, so he's a gum human or a rubber man. Essentially, Luffy, for those who are not familiar with this series, is very similar to Mr. Fantastic Reed Richards in his power set. The difference is Eiichiro Oda kind of exaggerates to an extreme degree, and it works out pretty well for the most part. One of the things that's kind of important is that bullets don't really work on Luffy, is a big deal of it. You see how here Lulu, who's one of the dock workers, he shoots Luffy, and it just kind of goes through, rips his clothes, and then bounces back, which is pretty funny. But essentially, the dock workers get into a fight. They kind of stop Franky while they're attacking Luffy, and they accuse Luffy of essentially attempting to assassinate Iceberg, the mayor of Water 7. And their reason for that is Robin was present when the assassination attempt occurred, which shocks Nami and Luffy a lot. And Luffy, this is kind of a mainstay of Luffy's character. He always stands by his crewmates through the worst and the best. So he, of course, even though he doesn't know the details, he's going to stick by his friends. Luffy is very much a character based on loyalty. This is like typical Eiichiro Oda, like over-exaggerated artwork, which is pretty much it. Anyhow, while this is going on and Luffy's kind of having trouble with the dock workers and kind of getting his ass kicked, Franky is kind of watching the entire thing, and he's kind of enjoying it at first because he doesn't like Luffy and he wants to kick Luffy's ass, but at the same time he's like, don't get in my way. And for those of you who are not familiar with manga, this is and anime, this is a very common, I guess, set piece, the whole tossing the tea table over, which is used in a lot of manga and anime. It's meant to be like an exaggerated response to a problem. So Franky decides to butt in, and this is the introduction of the coup d'event, one of his powers. So he basically uses up a lot of his energies. Franky's a cyborg, so he stores up his energy, and he creates basically a super air cannon that blows up the whole thing. But it does use up a lot of his powers, and you can see that with this Pompadour falling limp, which is pretty funny. Oh, man. So what happens after is Luffy and Nami are able to escape in the confusion, and Luffy is able to break into the mayor's mansion to talk to Iceberg, which he gets the opportunity to in this scene right here. And this basically confirms that, yes, Robin was the one who was part of the assassination attempt, and Luffy's like blown away. He can't believe that that's the case for the most part, but they kind of have to accept it. And everything for the rest of this volume is essentially set up and build up to the second assassination attempt. So Franky goes over to a bar to talk with Kokoro the Hag. In Japanese, it's Kokoro Obachan, or I forget the term that they use. But the Japanese term is essentially hag, which is funny. You find out later that these two are actually really good old-time friends. And then you have CP9 and Nico Robin basically working out the details of the next assassination attempt. And Luffy and the Straw Hats spend the rest of the issue kind of trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Robin makes an appearance in front of Sanji and Chopper to tell them that, hey, I'm not going back to the crew, and you guys need to leave me alone. My history is really dark, and I can't drag you into this. And the best thing for you guys to do is just abandon me and go away. Which, of course, the Straw Hat Pirates aren't going to do. So, kind of a wasted effort by Robin on that regard. But it does bring up a point that Zoro, or Zolo, depending on which version you want to go with right here, brings up a very good point, which is, hey, Nico Robin joined the crew back in the Alabasta arc. And she was originally introduced as an enemy. But after the arc, and a very typical Japanese manga way, the enemy eventually becomes an ally. It's kind of taken from Journey to the West, ancient Chinese story, and the trope is used a lot in Japanese manga and Asian stories for the most part. And that is, hey, is Nico Robin an enemy or a friend? We need to figure that out, because if she's going to be part of our crew, you know, we can't be childish about this. Zoro tends to be the serious character, and honestly, probably my favorite character in this series. I like a lot of the characters in One Piece to varying degrees, but Zoro is the shit. Other than the weirdness of having him carry a sword in his mouth for the three sword style, right, that he uses. But part of that is part of the hilarity and over the topness of One Piece, right? So the Straw Hats kind of come to a conclusion that, you know what, the CP9 or whatever the heck is behind her is they're trying to rile things up, and they're trying to blame us for it. So what would be the next thing for them to do in order to really put us in a bad position? And that is to actually finish up and assassinate Iceberg, right? So they know that CP9 and Nico Robin are going to assassinate Iceberg, or going to attempt to again. So the logical thing is, if the Straw Hats Pirates want to try to capture Nico Robin, or at least get to talk to her and figure out what the hell's going on, they gotta kind of stay close to Iceberg and jump in on the action when they attempt to assassinate again. And kind of like that leads to it. We go to catch Robin, right? You also get some background here. This is Usopp. He has left the crew, but he's in charge of what's left of the Merry-Go. Kind of some sad scenes right here of him working by himself with no friends. This whole arc is interesting. It's a good character development arc in some ways for Usopp, though I will say Oda really doesn't make Usopp that likable in a lot of parts here. And I think the character, though, ultimately grows up through this arc. I still kind of find him a bit annoying, though he gets a lot better after this, especially after the time skip, for those of you guys who are big One Piece fans, right? But yeah, the Agua Laguna is going on. That's why it's getting super windy, and the waves are getting bigger, which is essentially a yearly storm that occurs on Water 7 that kind of almost floods most of it. It's kind of like a hurricane in Florida. It happens almost every year for them. So Usopp was warned by Sanji and Chopper in an earlier chapter, but doesn't realize he needs to get that boat out of there. Meanwhile, Frankie is getting resolved that he's going to go find Straw Hat and go kick his ass. The rest of the Water 7 dock workers are basically creating a perimeter for Iceberg to protect him from the Straw Hat Pirates. So you get kind of a build-up here of drama, which is like, look at all these people that the Straw Hats have to get through to get to Iceberg, but at the same time, what is Nico Robin going to do to try to assassinate? This whole volume is a lot of build-up, though the action kind of gets pretty good at the end. So I'm going to kind of jump ahead right here. You got Frankie, all these guys doing that. And then you get a little bit of intrigue. Iceberg calls in Polly for a secret conversation between those two, and he sends off Polly to go do an errand for them while the assassination attempt essentially begins. So everything goes into chaos. Luffy ends up jumping in on his own. This is like very typical art of One Piece. Like, Oda does this type of art all the time, and I have to say, it's extremely effective. Well, I think for American comic book creators, I think there's kind of a dislike of this changing art style that manga does all the time. I do think that American artists should consider adopting this technique, because it's very effective. It's very difficult to do comedic and emotional, or, I guess, funny panels if you're only going to draw anatomically correct faces and bodies. It's possible, but ultimately, in terms of humor, cartooning is always going to be better in getting a laugh out of people than anatomically high detail style art. That's just kind of the way it is, unless you write very good dialogue or very good writing. Like, a good writer can make things humorous, but you gotta be kind of like careful even in that regard, right? So just every time I go through One Piece, it's like these panels always make me laugh, especially if I'm coming back from like American comics. Stuff is like so goddamn funny. So yeah, no, we get into the assassination attempt, and a lot of intrigue with people wearing masks, and the dock workers are just getting their asses kicked. Cypher Pole 9, which are these agents, sort of a shadow government, basically end up just crushing all the dock workers as they go to attempt to assassinate Iceberg. And ironically enough, they find out that Iceberg kind of tricked them, and he hasn't given them what they really want, which is the blueprints for the weapon of the ancient world, the Pluton, right? So there's a lot of these lure in One Piece of the ancient weapons, right? Like the Pluton is one of them. I think, what's the other one? Poseidon is another one. I'm trying to remember right now. It's been a while since, I go on and off with reading One Piece, so sometimes I, forget the lore because there's so many freaking characters in this series. Keep in mind, this looks like a lot, but, 34, 36, this isn't even, a third of the way to the end of One Piece, which is pretty insane if you think about it, right? I think we're going to get to, 100 volumes or something like that. Holy crap. Anyhow, very interesting intrigue between Robin and Iceberg, as both of them have keys to the ancient world knowledge, right? One of the big things in One Piece is that there's a piece of history that was erased from the books, and that's what Nico Robin, that's one of her motivating drives, is to discover the lost history of the world, right? There's some kind of interesting stuff here. So CP9, when they figure out this stuff is a fake, they end up gathering together to interrogate Iceberg. It's pretty interesting, and this is where you get the crazy twist of One Piece, which is when all of these CP9 agents show up, they reveal who they are. It's the dock workers. So it's Rob Lucci, Kaku, Khalifa, and this is Blueno. He's the guy who runs the bar. These are the guys who have been working undercover the entire time to try to get the blueprints of the ancient weapon for the world government. And it's actually pretty fascinating. I want to get to this part right here, which is... Now, again, I'm reading in the Japanese order, which is right to left, which is kind of weird, I understand. But Rob Lucci basically explains what they are, CP9, and that they are allowed to execute people that don't cooperate with the government. And Iceberg kind of goes over, it's how egotistical, as if a just killing is possible like that. And then, Rob Lucci is well, some who are in power have reconsidered their way of thinking. Rather than continue to live in fear of the weapon's reactivation, we should activate the weapon and put an end to this age of great voyages. We should use the weapon as a force for justice. Which is essentially, the world government is tired of all these damn pirates. And what they want to do is get all these super weapons in their hand so that they have the power to stop piracy and all these great adventures going on and bring the world under their control. Which, there's some good to it. Pirates do a lot of bad things, but at the same time, it's taking away people's freedom. A lot of people, I think, criticize One Piece as being very shallow and just, jokes and other stuff. And I think it's mainly people who have never actually read One Piece. Because One Piece is, for a shonen manga, there's actually some pretty deep themes here. And it's great. Rob Lucci as a, agent of a world government, all empowering, all controlling government over the people. Basically, challenges Iceberg, who is a businessman and engineer, yet you would dare stand in our way. Even now, the people over the world are being victimized by pirates, and you're saying you won't help them. And then he returns, this conversation is pointless. If you reactivate the weapon, the world will fight for control of that power, and the damage will only be greater. You seem to mistrust the government, Mayor Iceberg. And then Iceberg throws back the freaking ice line right here. I just know human nature, boy. Oh, snap! And of course he gets kicked in the face for saying that. But, so, what I want to say here is there's a little bit of, Japanese culture to this conversation, right? So, in America, the idea of holding weapons to defend yourself is acceptable, right? But in Japan, and some of it might be flavored by their experiences, obviously, with nuclear weapons, for obvious reasons, there is a general fear of massive weapons and the damage that they can do when other people get a hold of them to control and attack others. Now, again, Oda's not necessarily going one way or the other. He's merely telling a story right here. So it's kind of an example of manga having a little bit of politics in it, but the politics are mainly something that is more unique to the Japanese viewpoint. So yeah, no, this is, I freaking love this section. It's so freaking good. So anyway, they end up interrogating him, and they find out the truth, which is Iceberg is actually longtime friends with Frankie, who used to go by the name of Cutty Flam. And Frankie has the blueprints of the ancient weapon because Iceberg gave it to him for safekeeping. And just as they're about ready to kill Iceberg, boom, in comes Luffy and Zoro to save the day, and we're left on a cliffhanger for the end of Volume 36. So, boom, oh man, so good. Can't wait to also go over this one. We got 37, 38, 39. Action gets kicked up to an 11 right here. I know these videos for the manga volumes have been going like 15 minutes, which is pretty long, but again, manga volumes are like 180 pages, so I'm trying to kind of like summarize it, but at the same time not go, too long. So sorry about the 15-minute videos. It's kind of hard to do a manga volume that quickly. But anyway, that's the video. Let me know what you think. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. If you got any comments on One Piece Water 7 Volume 36, leave it down below, and I will see you next time.